The mic is hot. Welcome to the Sacred Realignment, Walking with Dan Joe. I'm your co-host, and now here he is, your host, Don Walking Empty Kennedy.
Hey everyone, how you doing today? Well, it's a beautiful day here in Calgary, and I'm just sitting here with my co-host. And today, our title of our show today is actually the Sacred Realignment, Walking with Dan Joe. And but I got a few things I want to say first before we get into the grit. Is first of all, I'd just like to say prayers to my family in Vancouver, Glenn and Dixie and the family, and for the loss of their son Jonathan. And he was a great guy. He fought a battle, and sometimes we don't all win, right? So prayers to you guys. Okay, you're in my heart always. Also, to the people in Tumbler Ridge, to the families that lost people there, and to their families, prayers to all of you out there. And you know, we can never give up. We just have to live the legacies out of those that the Creator has called to be with Him. And then on a little bit more cheery note, go Canada, go! Yeah, the Olympics, of course, is happening. I haven't been watching them, but I heard we won a gold. And did we win a gold there? My assistant should know what medal standings are. How are we doing in the Olympics? She's not going to talk to me today. Maybe she's mad.
That's a great question for the podcast. It's Sunday, February 15th, 2026. As of day 9 of the Milano Cortina Olympics, Canada has 7 gold medals, along with 4 silver and 5 bronze, making a total of 16. We're doing great.
That is super awesome. I didn't realize we had that many. Maybe I should start watching a little bit, but I got other things on my plate. I'm trying to keep myself fairly busy. So, well, we may as well get into her, and I'm just going to share a little bit with you guys. Part of my spiritual journey, or part of my finding me, I guess, you know, making me whole. You know, I lived my life in addiction, and it ended up in, I created by my choices a life of a living hell. In fact, I live in the basement of hell because it was pretty dark where I was, and I was not being a very upstanding member of society, let's say, and the people I was with were people that most people would avoid, but they took care of me. They you know, they had values and morals too, even though you know, they weren't the best group of people maybe, but they took care of me. So anyway, you know, after my addiction and an attempted suicide on December 16th, 2011, I ended up going to Cranbrook, BC. And that was thanks to my very dear angel friend, Caroline, who's played a part in my life since, you know, the early 90s. But, you know, when I went there, I got into recovery, and I didn't know that was going to be the beginning of an 8.5-year journey of recovery. I planned on going there for a couple of days or a week and getting healthy and then heading back to the hellhole in Edmonton. But I stayed. Something grabbed me, and there's magic in the air in Cranbrook, and I can attest to that. And I know a lot of people that will say the same thing because they felt the same thing when they got there. Because I ended up working at a drug and alcohol treatment center, and it was called Top of the World Ranch. It was a world-renowned treatment center, and very expensive. In fact, I used to joke and say the only way I could get treatment there was to get a job there. But Mark Sadler was an amazing human being. Me and him, we got along quite well, very well actually, and I worked hard for him. But being there also helped me stay focused on recovery, and I loved my job there. It was awesome. But there was a special man that was there, and Top of the World Ranch was a very sacred place. It wasn't a 12-step program. It was, what do you call it? It was a holistic. It was a holistic program. And Mark had actually given land back to the Ktunaxa people. That's the Indigenous tribe that's there. And they had a sweat lodge, and we had ceremony. And to me, it was all new because I, of course, was raised white, and I still wasn't sure about who I was when I got to Cranbrook. I mean, I had an inclination that I had to be Native or something, or Métis, but my mother, due to residential school, of course, never admitted it, never told us anything. And I don't even know if she really knew, because she was put into what she called the orphanage, which later I found out was a residential school. And so she raised us with the belief that we were Irish and French. And, all my life, something was missing. Something in here. Part of me I wasn't complete. And I never had that feeling that maybe a lot of people had, that I never got to have, of being that belonging, because there was always something missing in me. And that is what drove me, I believe, to the alcohol and the drugs, and made me become, not made me, I allowed it to let me become who I became. And I became downright evil. Okay. Like I was not a good person. Today I feel good with myself. I found the love, and I still struggle with it, but, there's an amazing man that, like I say, I met in Cranbrook at Top of the World Ranch. I actually met him first time I met him was at a Top of the World NA meeting. They had them every Saturday out there, and I went out there when I first got to Cranbrook, because I had to do 12-step, because Caroline was keeping tabs on me and making sure I stayed in recovery. And so anyway, after the meeting, we always stood around and we always stood around and had coffee, and there was usually cake or something. At the Top of the World Ranch, there's a guy named Sheldon. He was a Red Seal chef, and he made the most amazing, amazing food. So there was always some snacks for us, cookies or something, or cake. And I loved it. When I worked there, I got to eat all that food. It was awesome. It's kind of like now being an actor. The only time I really eat good is when I go to work. So when I worked at the ranch, I ate good when I went to work. Now that I'm an actor, I eat really good when I go to work. Other than that, it's my pizza pops and frozen pizza and stuff a guy makes. So 2012, I get to Cranbrook. Actually, it was 2011 when I got to Cranbrook, but it was December 17th. I really didn't meet Dan Joe. I'm sure it was early January 2012. And it was funny because the meeting at the Narcotics Anonymous ended. And there's two things that happened at that meeting. Nope, it was a third meeting. Because they very rarely had people to share their stories. And so by the third meeting, they'd asked me if I felt like sharing. And I did. But I'm jumping ahead. My ADHD, you got to be careful. I might start a story today, and you might not hear it for another episode 5 times down the road, because I get going, right? But anyway, there was Dan Joe. And Dan Joe was an Indigenous fella. And he was from he was from the Ktunaxa Nation, which is St. Mary's Reserve, just outside Cranbrook. There was actually a residential school there. And it's quite amazing what they did, because they turned the residential school, they remodeled it, and they turned it into a hotel, like a hotel a resort. They had a golf course, and it's funny because even all the staff were white and black, just like the nuns and priests did back in the day. But I met a man there that actually took me for a tour and really tuned me in about what residential school was all about. He attended it, and it was really sad, the things I heard. But anyway, Dan Joe was taken under the wing of the chief of the Ktunaxa people back in the day, because he came out rodeoing, and he was really from the Kamloops area, I believe, up in the BC desert there. But Dan Joe, to me, he became my spiritual leader, even after the way he introduced himself, because after the meeting, he came up to me. I never met him. I mean, I heard him share, and I shared because he was in the program as well. And he came up to me and he says, "Hey, Don, what tribe you from?" I looked at him and I said, "I ain't no fucking Indian." And he looked at me and he didn't get... If anybody's ever met a person that you would think is the closest resemblance to God you ever met, that's Dan Joe. Soft-spoken. Very, very... You just felt his energy of love and caring and compassion and empathy. He was an amazing man. And so he said, "Don, come on, and why so mad about it?" And I said, "Well, Jesus, I'm sick and tired of people calling me a fucking Indian and I ain't one." And he goes, Don, I hate to tell you this, he said, but I believe you are one of our people. You know, you're. In fact, I'd probably tell you by your cheekbones and everything that you're probably Cree. And I said, listen. And he says, no. Let's just sit down and talk. I no right to get mad. And he was so calming. But he said to me, he said, Don, seriously, we got to look into your ancestry. And I said, listen, no disrespect, but I don't want to disrespect my mother either. And I don't want her to know that I'm, you know, and he goes, well, where is your mom now? And I said, I don't know. I said, because I hadn't been home in a long time, you know, like to see my mom. And so he asked me a few questions and this and that. And anyway, we went on our way. And I said, well, you know what? I'll thank you, Dan Joe, because the way he spoke to me was, he almost filled that gap. I felt different. You know, I felt a little different after talking. You know how when you always say when you talk to somebody that they should feel better when they walk away than they did when they first got there? I felt better after Dan Joe because he kind of puttied up that gap in me, that something that was missing. I felt a little different, you know. But we started hanging out, and he started taking me under his wing, and then I found out through the tribal pages that it's a gentleman named his last name's Wa. I put together in Saskatchewan, and it had my mom's maiden name, Aubuchon. And so I looked it up, and there she was, Therese, not Teresa, Therese with an E, not an A at the end. And so it had the lineage going back to like 1895. And it showed my great-great-grandmother, my great-great-great-grandmother, and that they were all born on the Flying Dutch Reserve of the Meadow Lake Nation. So I found out I was Cree. And under the Indian Act, I should get my status, but the Canadian government still has their assimilation thing going politically, right? They don't allow you to become a native. Like, you know, we're the only people in the world that have to have a piece of paper telling people who we are. Isn't that crazy? Like, I'm not status. I'm allowed to be, but I'm not because I don't have paperwork. The paperwork I have, the government won't accept because it's not government issue. The government issue paperwork they burned so that nobody would know who anybody was. So I'm hooked, kind of, but I'm going after it again. I fought for years to try and get it, and I gave up. And I should never give up on anything if we believe what we're going after is the truth, you know. So anyway, Danjo was a special man, and I found out I was Cree. So now I'm attaching myself to him, saying, Dan, can you tell me some things? And he was teaching me things like the 7 teachings, right? I think, hey, assistant, are you there?
Yes, I'm here, Don.
Can you tell me what the 7 teachings, basic teachings of the Cree people are?
That is central to the Cree path in many First Nations. They are traditionally connected to animal guides and include teachings like love, eagle, respect, buffalo, courage, bear, honesty, raven, humility, wolf, wisdom, beaver, and truth, turtle. It sounds like Dan Joe really tailored those teachings to your journey, especially with the turtle teaching you to slow down and live in Indian time.
Yeah, and that brings up Dan Joe gave me my first spirit animal, and that's how you get them. People always say to me, "How do you get a spirit animal?" I says, "Well, mine was presented to me from whom I considered an elder, and he gave it to me because, well, the main reason he gave it to me, and you probably see this now because I'm high energy, high anxiety, right? In fact, when I used to work at the ranch, I used to sit there and people would think I was the one coming up dope because I was just, but Danjo told me, Don, your main spirit animal, I want you to read about it. And I did. And he says, this turtle, he says, I need you to slow down. Slow down in life. Life is not a race. It's like Indian time, okay? We don't plan on being somewhere at noon. We get there when we get there because we slow down. We make sure of our surroundings. We look around. We look for the messages from the Creator. We see the animals. And what I was taught from Dan Joe is when you see animals, I have an animal spirit guide because I don't have it all memorized. He knew so much of this just inside his brain. Animals, when you see them far away, all animals have meaning and they give messages. And it's amazing how it works out into what's going on in your life. But if you see an animal far away, you look it up, you see why they appeared. And you need to pay attention to it. Not hardcore because they were quite a ways away. But if one gets right in your path or right up close to you, then you read that message and you read it. And you not only just read it, you hear it, you understand it, you read between the lines, and it will help you focus and stay on your spiritual path. And that's how Dan Joe explained the spirit animals to me. So, Turtle, which is on my arm right here, it was the first tattoo I ever got in my life. And it actually had a little stone right there, rose colored, from my daughter Casey, who I love dearly, but she's pretty angry at me. But the other thing is Turtle, what Dan Joe told me, I don't have to stay in the dark anymore. I can poke my head out of the shell, and I don't need that protection of the shell around me all the time anymore, you know? And so I took that to heart because everything he told me, I took to heart. I listened to that, man, and I didn't listen to people very well, right? So, you know, being a businessman for many years in that hustle bustle and being responsible for people and budgets and inventory and making sure the customers got their stuff, I'm now in a world of I have no responsibilities. I'm in recovery. And I just get to work on me. Like, how blessed is that? Right? How lucky can a guy get? And I always say this because even in my near-death experiences prior to getting to Cranbrook, things happen that I just don't understand. Right? I just don't understand why they happen. And I wasn't a guy that believed in God, but, you know, I went to Connect Church for a long time with Frank and them, and it was the church for people who don't like church. And God somehow weaseled his way into me, and I believed he's there. I don't believe some of the stuff they say in the stories because I'm one of these guys. That's why I got my assistant. I like checking the facts out. I don't just, because of the misguidance in history and in society, people just hearing something and believing it, I don't do that. I like to check it out to make sure it's actually real. So anyway, Dan Joe became my spiritual leader, and he started teaching me the ways of the ancestors. You know, the love, the unity. Natives very big on unity, and courage and all that stuff, and how soft he was, and how he didn't get mad at people, and how he told me he made time for people. When somebody would stop to talk to him, he wouldn't be giving them, I can't talk right now, I gotta go somewhere. No, he'd stay. The famous saying about Dan Joe was, if he's supposed to be somewhere, it was, hey, where's Dan Joe? Because maybe for a sweat he's late, but he's not late. He gets there exactly when he's supposed to be there. That's the way he lives. That's the way he taught me. That's the way I try to be today. Is people expect me to be someplace at 3:30. I may not make it there, or I may get there early, but I can't promise. I don't make promises. I do my best, and that's what I tell people. It's like I don't give advice. I make suggestions, okay? Because otherwise, I could be held responsible if I give advice to somebody, and that advice doesn't work out. Now it's my fault, right? And I always tell people, don't make promises to me because you never know if you can keep them or not. Just do your best. It's one of the 4 directions, right? I forget the guy who wrote that book. Do you know is the author of the four directions? I can't remember. Pablo something. My assistant, can you remember? The 4 agreements, the 4 agreements. You don't know who that is?
Don Miguel Ruiz.
That's it, Don Miguel Ruiz. And the 4 agreements are something that everybody should apply in their life. It's funny because in recovery and in addiction and in these learnings and these teachings, they're all they're so amazing. If you just apply them in your life and make little notes in your head, like the 4 agreements. Now, let me see if I can remember them without having to look them up. One is don't make assumptions. Okay. We all know that because if you spell assume and you cut it in half, it's make an ass out of you and me. Don't take things personally. The world doesn't revolve around you. Always be impeccable with your word. So be mindful who's around, who's listening, what you're saying, mean what you say what you mean. And the 4th one is don't tell me, always do your best. That's the best you can do, right? And if you didn't do your best this time on something, well, maybe that means you got to learn a little bit more, practice a little bit more. These guys in the Olympics aren't winning golds and they just started doing that yesterday. They trained for years. Us in life, we got to train. Life isn't just a book of instructions. We have to learn because most of the people don't use what's given to us. The Creator gave us everything we need to function in this world and to be whole and happy and to live a divine life. But we don't use it because we do half measures. We take the easy way out, So, but Dan Joe, he was real. You could feel the energy. I started going to sweats because that's what Indigenous people do. And I was becoming a Cree warrior. I was looking it up. I was reading about them. I was learning about them. In fact, Dan Joe presented me with my eel feather. It's right there. I use it when I smudge. Or if I'm getting into a serious talk, I hold it because when you hold an eagle feather, you are to be 100% honest always. Okay. And I do my best to work with honesty because honesty near cost my life by not having honesty. Funny story. I was downtown Cranbrook, okay? And Cranbrook is not that big. But if you get a parking ticket and you pay it within 48 hours, that's $5, right? $5, big deal. Well, for me, it was not a big deal anymore because I wasn't spending $1,000 a day on crack cocaine. So any money I had, well, what the hell? But so I'm downtown and I'm parked my truck, my car that I was using. I'm sorry, I was using a car then from the ranch, and I see Dan Joe. He's